Hi, Paul. How are you?
Yeah, good. Can't complain.
Good man, Paul. Well, welcome to the Business Spotlight. Thanks very much for taking the time to speak with me today. Paul, could we start? Could you tell me a little about yourself, your background, and your business, please?
Yeah, so I'm a managing director at Neo Environmental. We're a planning environmental consultancy. I've got about 50 staff across the UK and Ireland. I'm based out of our Ballymena office, which is our biggest office. We have offices in Glasgow, where I spent 10 years, and we set up the company in 2012 there. We have an office in Warrington. Recently opened an office in Bristol. We've got two staff there, and then we've got about another 12 14 staff in the Republic of Ireland, with an office just recently opened in Galway. There, we've got about five staff there. So it's we're multidisciplinary planning environmental. We would have planners, archaeologists, ecologists, landscape architects, hydrologists, so all the kind of main disciplines. So yeah, my background, I'm a chartered environmentalist, and I'm dual qualified, and I'm also a licensed archaeologist. But I've been running planning environmental teams since about 2010.
And what was it? So was this what you always wanted to do, or how did you end up where you are now?
No, it definitely wasn't where I anticipated being when I was a young lad. I kind of my original background. I did a degree in heritage studies in Galway, and it was a great course, loved it, but it was very general, and I ended up doing a postgrad in business studies, and I worked in a bank for a year in Galway, which just wasn't for me. Great experience at the time, but it wasn't where I wanted to be. So I actually ended up then, from that, I funded doing a master's, and I came to Queen's in 2004 and did a master's in archaeology in Queen's. And I loved that. Now, I worked in archaeology from then on until about 2008. And I actually worked on the A5 road project in Northern Ireland here, which we're actually doing ecological work on now, which is finally good to see it go ahead. But I studied, worked as an archaeologist, but then the recession came in 2008, and I was unemployed. Wasn't sure what to do. I managed, at that point, as a kind of project manager, I was running big projects down in the likes of Limerick and Louth and that. Worked on all the major road projects, and to be honest, it just no work. So I ended up. My partner at the time, she was over in Glasgow, and just she was studying to be a teacher. So I moved over there, and I ended up getting work in Orkney of all places. So I ended up way off the north coast of Scotland, so nowhere near Glasgow, and probably harder to get from there to Glasgow than it was from Ireland. But I enjoyed that. Loved the archaeology is fantastic, but it was kind of seasonal work. You do 3 or 4 months up there. Then I worked in the A5 road project in between, then back up there, and I just had enough of it. And I sold my car and back to did a master of environmental management, and to be honest, it's the best thing I did. I had worked in a multidisciplinary consultancy in the A5 called Michelle, who were now WSP, and that's where I'd seen the kind of multidisciplinary approach, decided that's something that might be worth pursuing. And that's when the archaeology, when I kind of had I seen that drying up, I decided that's where to go. So I did that master's, and I got in with a company then. And within 3 months, I was running the planning environmental team, built that up from about 5 to 20 staff. And then in about 3 years, I decided it was time to go out on our own. And so myself and my business partner at the time, Michael, we set up the company, Michael McGee. So he worked on the technical side or on the planning side, and we set up Neo in 2012. Just the two of us, and we built it from there. So it's been a long journey. It's been a good journey, but a long journey.
And help me understand your target market, Paul. So who do you work best with? Who really benefits from working with Neo Environmental?
So our main work stream is in renewables. So 90% of our work will be renewable energy. So that's wind farms, solar farms, battery storage projects, hydrogen projects. So we're working on a lot of large utility scale projects. And that's across Ireland and the UK. So clients we'd work with are big clients. We work with a lot of utility companies. So we'd work with the likes of Scottish Power Engine Networks, Energia, NG, Statkraft, RAISE, Lightsource, BP. So we had a lot of big clients there. And so we then work with individual developers as well. So the likes of RAISE, Every Energy, BNRG, Neo and companies like that. So it's a mixture really, but it's generally big kind of corporates who are doing big renewable energy projects. And that's looked at big targets in Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, UK hit 80% renewables by 2030. So it's a massive market. It's a growing market. We probably hit it right at the right time. As I say, we set up in 2012 when it was an established market, but it was still growing quite well. You know, we've seen serious growth in the last kind of 5, 6 years. It's just been major.
And what would you say has been your biggest lesson since being a business owner?
There's been a lot of lessons along the way, to be fair. I think for me, one of the key things is, you know, that you need to empower your staff. The key thing is having the right staff. Good staff will make a company, and the bad staff can be the downfall of it. And you need to realize, you know, when you've got good staff, that you have to empower them, you have to look after them and retain them. So that, you know, for us, that was a big part of it. Trying to retain staff, especially as a small growing company, you need to build a culture that they all kind of buy into, and creating that kind of an atmosphere, and for them to be able to see that growth and be part of it. And I suppose one thing we did, so we were, just to give you a bit of I suppose a background there, we grew the company substantially up to about 2012. And then we were growing that quickly with the way the market's going. We felt we didn't really have the control and the ability to compete with the bigger companies. So we would grow staff, we'd have them 2 or 3 years, and big companies would just come in and take them once they got that experience. So we got to a point where it just become very frustrating and hard to manage. And we realized we needed help. So we went to market, and 12 companies showed an interest. Then we got around 7, 4, and eventually we narrowed down to 2. We went into full due diligence with, and we were bought out by a company called Origin Enterprises. And for them, it was a new venture into this type of market. They're more traditionally involved in the agri sector. So the reasons for that were so that we could retain staff, we could grow them staff, and they brought in a lot of the elements that we just couldn't do as a small company. So that was the HR stuff, that was the IT kind of stuff, the marketing, financial, all of that. And it just gave them massive potential and for growth. So we went from 20 staff in 2022 up to 50 staff now. So in a year and a half, we've gone from you know, from 20 to 50 is a major growth. But that was because of a lot of that. And with that, we've realised that, you know, when we went through that process, the staff we had at the time, we were completely transparent and said, look, we feel we're better off being acquired, and these are the reasons, and it's in your benefit and ours. But we also said, look, we value what you've given us to date. We want to make sure you feel part of this process and that you're getting rewarded. So we actually gave them 10% of the sale. So they all, you know, they all done very well out of it. And we've managed to retain nearly all of them staff because of that. And that loyalty we've shown them, they've shown in return. And look, we have brought in additional benefits as well. So I think that was one of the key things we learned. It's a difficult market at the moment in terms of staffing and retention of staff.
That's a great share. What would you say you've learned about yourself, Paul, along your business journey?
I think probably learned to surprise myself in a lot of ways, of how adaptable I've been and how much you've learned over that time. When I look back at where I was in even 2010 to 2012 and where I'm now, it's chalk and cheese. And sometimes you actually grimace at some of the decisions you made, and at just at your lack of maybe knowledge and experience. So, you know, obviously it comes with experience, that ability to know what decisions to make. You learn the hard way. You learn through it's a hard learning curve, steep learning curve, I suppose. And you have to learn quickly. That's the thing. You can't afford to make too many mistakes, or you're not going to last. So I think that was the key thing, just learning to, one, trust in ourselves, but also learn by the mistakes and making sure we're taking account of them. And so I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's a great point that you raise. It's easy for, can often be easy for people to look back 5, 6, 7 years and look on mistakes that were being made then. I think that it's a great challenge for people, anyone listening to this, to think about what are you doing now that you look back on in 5 years and reflect on. So yeah, a great point that you raise. So tell me, who has been the biggest influence on you along the way, Paul?
Look, again, it's been a long journey, and there's been a lot of people who've helped us along the way. without whom we would definitely, myself and Michael wouldn't be where we are. And Michael McGee, like me and Michael developed this together. It was a 50-50 partnership. We probably changed our role slightly since the company was bought out. But we run the company in the same way. It's just that they've refined the roles more. But what I think there was at the very start got some good advice from people, and one of them was a guy called Nick Bauer, a New Zealand guy that we'd worked with, and he had run a couple of companies himself, and he said, look, there's two ways we can do this. He said, number one, you can put all the money you want to go with a big budget, or number two, you can go in and do it on a shoestring. And he said, look, do not go with the big budget. You need to develop this, because before you know it, all that money will go, and you won't know where it's going, and you have to build up the client base. I think that was the key thing at the very start. Anyone can set up a company, but you have to actually run that company, and that's why so many companies disappear in the first 6 months, a year. It's very difficult, and it is difficult. I probably got a lot of influence about my parents, because both my parents, they're quite entrepreneurial. They had their own kind of, dad worked for Tesco's, was a manager there. He lost his job there. They moved out of Ireland back in the 80s, and he bought a shop in where I'm originally from, in Athlone, Galway. And they built that up, extended it, and they bought a second shop, built that. And then also during the boom time, knew the right time to sell. They sold one of them and did very well out of it. So probably a lot of influence from me from them. And then we got some mentoring. So we run things like Business Gateway in Scotland, and to Invest in I here, where we got a lot of mentoring, a lot of help. And I think it's people with experience who've been there before, and there's a track record. You kind of rely on them a lot. And I'll go to a lot of industry events, and I'm not afraid to ask questions. I suppose that's the key thing as well.
Very good. And what gets you out of bed in the morning and drives your passion for the business?
One thing I think I always am, I commit to things, and whatever I go, whatever I'm involved in, I try and commit to it 100%. Be it when I was younger, it would maybe been more towards sport, and then once I got older, it was more towards the business. And I think once you start the company, you have to commit. If you don't, the company won't go anywhere. You have to do the long hours. You have to actually commit to the company and the time, the effort, the resources, to that. And I enjoy it. I'm a morning person anyway, so getting out of bed isn't too bad for me, even though I have 3 young kids at the moment, so it's a bit harder. But it's that desire to progress and grow, and see the company, to grow beyond what it is already. And actually seeing that, then already on that journey, and knowing the opportunities that are ahead of us. And we're extremely busy at the moment. Anyone in our industry is. So there's massive opportunity. And again, I like seeing where the staff, you spend probably more of your time with your staff than you do with your family and friends, and they become ultimately your friends. So you want to see them develop. You want to grow for them as well and give them the opportunity. So that, for me, they're the big things. I enjoy seeing people develop and seeing people come in maybe at a graduate level with us, and they move up to the ranks up to senior principal or whatever it is. So that's what I enjoy.
And if you were on a desert island and you could listen to a podcast or read a book, Paul, what would you? Definitely no archaeological work allowed. So purely, but listen to a podcast or reading a book. What would you be doing?
Obviously, Stephen Bartlett's one that I've really taken to, and the Irish CEO. I read his book there recently. I say I read it, I listened to it. Yeah, so I really enjoyed that, and just the people he's interviewed and the experience he's gained from his journey. There's also the one, The Chimp Paradox, is one of the books I've read. I really enjoyed that. Just, I suppose, more of in terms of the psyche and behavioral science and that kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed that. So they're probably the ones I really enjoyed. Outside of that, it is mainly the autobiographies, but not so much about their sporting achievements, but more the journeys. And you take Joe Schmidt and you look at the management styles and how he managed people and situations. And again, like that, I'm reading Johnny Sexton's book at the moment, Obsessed. And you look at Johnny Sexton, he is obsessed with what he did, and you can see that in the pitch and the passion he has, and it's good just to see that, because it is about personalities and managing situations. It's no different in sport than it is in business. So I find that interesting.
Yeah, great share. And yeah, there's so many correlations between sport and business. If you can invite any three people, alive or dead, to a dinner party, who would be there?
So I suppose I was thinking about people who are alive this one time. David Attenborough would have to be up there for me. Just a fantastic person and great to listen to. And just what again, things he's achieved in his life, things he's seen, you know, and again, my background, he would definitely be the number one there. Um, uh, Richard Branson is someone again that I admire more so, just given his background, the issues he dealt with, you know, he's dyslexic, he really struggled with numbers. And when you hear some of them stories, and just, you know, I think he's been a brilliant business person, but given again his background to be able to accomplish what he has, I think it's fantastic. And again, Sia Khaleesi maybe is one. I read his book, and I just so my wife my wife's a teacher, and she spent a lot of time doing a charity work for in a place in Malawi. So I actually went over to there for 2 weeks, probably about 8, 9 years ago now, and just seeing the abject poverty and what people have to go through and that. So we've done a bit of charity work and stuff in the past for that. But reading Sia Khaleesi's biography and what he's come up through, I mean, you know, living in the townships in South Africa and experience what real hunger is. But then to get to where he is and the adversity and to become, you know, captain of South Africa, it's just brilliant. Obviously, someone like Nelson Mandela and people like that, yes, you'd love to meet. But yeah, you know, people in the present, they'll probably be the top people I'd enjoy to meet.
And if you could go back in time, Paul, and give some advice to your 18-year-old self, what would that be?
Um, I think it's going back to what I said about, I think, building relationships. I think when you're younger, you're very optimistic, probably very enthusiastic. I was probably quite, I would say, slightly ambitious. More, I probably my younger years is more focused on sport than I was in my education and looking forward and kind of just planning ahead. You don't at 18, I don't think you do. That's probably one of the things I would change. Is just been a bit more forward thinking and looking and strategic in what I wanted to achieve. I'm very happy to where I've got to, but it's been a long road and probably could have been a lot of shortcuts I could have taken to get here. But they're probably the big things, that just trusting people, enabling people. I think that's the key thing. When you're young, you know, again, you're quite stern in your own views, and it's maybe something that you need to learn. Just listen to people more and being open to other people's opinions and views.
And what would you say is the biggest challenge that you're currently facing in your business?
Um, Probably at this moment in time, in what we do, because it's such a booming industry, it's trying to recruit people, trying to get the right people in and retain them. It's just, it's so difficult at present. There's an awful lot of poaching going on. There's a lot of job hopping going on. So, you know, it's trying to retain staff and attract the right staff. And that's clear for us. That's definitely the biggest issue at this moment of this market. Like there's no shortage of work. In a sense, we are turning down some work. And we know from the other companies within our group that they're struggling as well. So it's, you know, there needs to be a lot more training. There needs to be probably a lot more courses within the universities, and probably getting people into the right disciplines. And I think that's the biggest challenge at the moment.
And tell me, if we fast forward now 5 years, so coming to the end of 2029, my goodness, about to hit 2030, what does neo-environmental look like then?
There's some serious opportunities for the company. Like as I said, we've grown by 2.5 times the size in the last year and a half. In reality, next year we're probably going to be somewhere, I'd expect probably 70, 80 staff maybe, and year after that touch 100 and so on. So look, we're probably just going to be a far bigger organization. I hope to have probably better opportunity in the management structure for bringing in people and developing people internally, get more support. But also just growing our, I suppose, our market share. We're one of the biggest consultancies in terms of solar and the Republic of Ireland. I think we did a third of all the solar projects that were in the last red auctions for subsidies last year. And we've done some of the larger projects down there. So we've got a good reputation, we've got good traction, and probably just growing that and building upon it. So that's probably the focus where we'll be, and the ambitions for the company in the next 5 years.
And if somebody likes the sound of that, Paul, and would like to reach out to you or to the business, what would be the best way for them to go about that?
Look, we've got our website there, and there's an info box there if people want to do that, and they can, if they address it to me, I'll get it. We're not that big an organisation. It'll come to me. We've obviously got our various offices and our phone numbers there as well. I'm based at the Ballymena office, so there's a direct dial number there also. So happy for people to get in contact with you either them ways. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So again, if people want to connect, I'm happy to speak to people or be in contact with people that way.
That's great. Thanks very much. Well, Paul Neary from Neo Environmental, thanks very much for taking the time to speak with me today. It's been a really interesting conversation, a fascinating journey from archaeologist to business owner, and some great learnings and great shares along the way. So, Paul, I wish you, I'm going to start saying it now, I wish you a Merry Christmas for the rest of, and the best of luck for the rest of 2024 and indeed beyond. So, Paul Neary, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Peter, and have Christmas yourself as well.